Why did my husband show up at the gym with the car already packed and a stranger waiting by the front desk with an envelope? What turns a quiet, patient man into someone who says almost nothing while a clerk reads out temporary orders with half the gym watching? How did a few harmless jokes about him being weekend with me holding legal papers in my leggings and sweaty hoodie? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Isolde Merin, and I am not the villain in my own life, no matter what people say now. I am 31, I work at the front desk of a small dental clinic, and I'm tired of feeling like my life is shrinking while my body and my dreams fade. When I look at my husband, I mostly see how small my world has become. That morning, he was already in the kitchen when I came out of the bedroom. He was packing our son Noah's lunch, cutting the crusts off the bread the way Noah liked. His shoulders were slightly rounded from sitting at a computer all day. His t-shirt hung loose around his arms. He smiled when he saw me and asked if I slept well. I said I was still tired. He offered to make me coffee. I told him he knew how I liked it. He laughed a little, like it was a small joke between us, but it just made me think how predictable he was. While he poured my coffee, I sat at the table and scrolled through my phone. My feed was full of fitness videos, women my age doing squats, wearing bright leggings, laughing with trainers who had big arms and wide shoulders. I looked down at my own soft waist and felt angry for a moment, but not at myself. At him, at us, at this boring life. I told him I was thinking about joining a gym. He turned, surprised and happy, and asked which one I wanted. I said I needed something real, not a cheap, sad place full of old machines. He started to name a low-cost gym near his office. I rolled my eyes and told him that was exactly what I meant. He paused, then said we had to be careful with money, but he would support me. He even offered to pay for the membership from his account. I said he was acting like my father and that I would handle it. In my head, I told myself he did not trust me, that he wanted to control where I went. When he left with Noah for school, I stared at the empty kitchen. His mug sat near the sink, our son's small cup next to it. It looked like a picture of a family in an ad. Safe, plain. I thought, if I do not do something now, this will be my whole life. At the clinic, the morning was busy. Phones were ringing, people were asking about insurance, and children cried in the waiting room. My coworker Leah leaned over between patients and whispered that she had started at a new gym. She pulled up a video on her phone of her trainer, correcting her form on a lunge. He was fit, tanned, and confident. I watched him touch her arm and show her the movement. She said he pushed her, but made her feel strong. I felt a sharp sting of envy. I asked where the gym was. She told me it was the big commercial one near the mall, the one with the bright lights and nice machines. She said they had a trainer named Marco who was amazing, and she joked that he could make anyone look good. I laughed, but inside I was already imagining myself there, under those lights, with someone like him focused only on me. During my lunch break, I went online and filled out a form for a free trial at that gym. When the page said a trainer would call me to schedule a session, I felt a rush of excitement, like I had done something dangerous. It was just a gym, but still, it felt like a secret. That evening, Daniel asked how my day was. I told him the clinic was busy. I added that I had looked at gyms and found a good offer. He asked calmly which one I picked. I said the big one near the mall, and he frowned a little, saying it was expensive. I told him I had already signed up for a trial and that he always tried to make me feel guilty for wanting things. He said that was not true and that he only wanted us to stay within our budget. I answered that he never complained when he spent money on his computer parts. He got quiet after that and said he would support whatever made me happy. I took that as a victory. The next day, after work, I went to the gym. The place smelled like rubber and energy drinks, and music thumped from the speakers. The mirrors were huge and made everything look sharp. At the front desk, a woman smiled and told me Marco would be right out. When he came, I almost laughed from relief. He was exactly what I expected. Tall, muscles tight under his shirt, easy smile. He shook my hand and asked about my goals. I told him I wanted to tone up, feel strong, and look like myself again. In my head, I added that I wanted to feel anything again. He walked me through the machines, his hand sometimes brushing my back to guide me. He stood behind me when I tried squats, one hand near my waist, the other hovering by my shoulder to keep me safe. He said my form was not bad, and that with him I would make quick progress. I felt small and special next to him. When my legs started to shake, he laughed and told me he liked clients who worked hard. No one had talked about my body like that in years, at least not in a way that made me feel powerful. Halfway through, my phone buzzed in my bag. When we took a break, I checked it. Daniel had sent a message asking how the gym was and if I needed a ride. I showed the notification to Marco and said my husband was already worried I would break something. Marco smiled and said husbands often got nervous when their wives started taking care of themselves. I liked that sentence. It made me feel like I was doing something brave instead of selfish. Later, in the locker area, I opened Daniel's text and told him the session was great and that I would get home late. He asked if I felt safe walking in the dark. I answered that I was not a child and that he should not make everything a problem. I could almost see his face as he read the message, that slow hurt that made me feel guilty for a second. Then I told myself he was being dramatic. The next weekend, we had dinner at a small family restaurant with my sister Jade and some friends. The place had warm lights and noisy tables. Daniel sat next to me, Noah in a high chair between us. Jade asked about the gym, and I started to tell stories about Marco. I said he was so strong that he had to catch me when I almost fell during squats, and that he lifted weights Daniel could not even move. Everyone laughed. Jade said it sounded like I finally had a real trainer. I added that my husband would probably pass out if he tried one of Marco's workouts. People laughed again. Daniel smiled tightly and looked down at his plate. I said people like Daniel were sweet but weak, more like indoor cats than men who could really protect a woman. Jade almost choked on her drink, laughing. I did not look at Daniel's face when I said that. I told myself he knew I was joking and that he should be strong enough to handle a little teasing. If he could not, that was his problem, not mine. That night, after we put Noah to bed, Daniel sat on the couch and asked if we could talk. He said he felt hurt by some of the jokes at dinner. I answered that everyone was laughing and that he was making a big deal over nothing. I told him that if he wanted me to respect him, he needed to be less sensitive. He went quiet, then said he wished I would see him the way I used to. I replied that he was the one who changed, not me. When I went to our bedroom, I saw his phone light up on the nightstand. A calendar reminder slid across the screen. Meeting, personal, 11:30. I smirked and told myself he was finally going to a gym too, or maybe a therapist, to learn how not to be so weak. I turned off the light and fell asleep, feeling like I was the only one in this marriage who actually wanted more from life. The next few weeks at the gym felt like a new life. At least, that is how I told the story to myself. After work, I would change in the tiny clinic bathroom, stuff my scrubs into a bag, and head straight to the gym. The automatic doors slid open, the music hit me, and it was like I stepped into a different body. The mirrors were bright, the machines shiny, and the people there actually looked at me. Not in a weird way, just... They noticed. Marco started greeting me by name. He would slap his hand lightly against mine and ask if I was ready to work. I always said I was tired, and he would laugh and say that was why I needed him. He adjusted my schedule so I had 2 sessions a week with him, not just one. I told myself it was because he saw potential. When I told Daniel about the extra sessions, I said the gym recommended them and that he should be happy I cared about my health. One evening, Marco had me at the squat rack again. He stood behind me. close enough that I could feel his breath when he told me to keep my chest up. His hands brushed my sides as he checked my form. He said my balance was better than last time, and that I had good glutes for this kind of work. It made me laugh, even though my legs were shaking. Nobody at home talked about my body like that, not in a way that made me feel powerful. Between sets, I pulled out my phone. A message from Daniel blinked at the top of the screen. He asked what time I would be done, and if I wanted him to start dinner. I rolled my eyes and told Marco my husband was acting like an anxious parent. Marco shrugged and said some partners got nervous when their other halves started leveling up. I liked that phrase. Leveling up. It sounded like I was in a game, and Daniel was just stuck on the same boring level. I wrote back to Daniel that he worried too much, and that I would eat at the gym cafe with Leah. That was not true, but it sounded better than saying I just did not want to rush home. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, nothing more. I told myself his short answer proved he did not really care, even though I knew I had just pushed him away. At the supermarket the next day, I ran into our neighbor, Mia, while Daniel and I did the weekly shop. She peered at my face and said she had seen my gym videos. She smiled and said my trainer looked intense. Her tone had a small edge, but I chose to hear admiration. I laughed and said he had to be strong to handle someone like me. Daniel pushed the cart forward, quiet. In the car, Daniel asked gently if I really needed so much one-on-one time with Marco. I told him he sounded insecure. He said he was just asking if I felt comfortable and if there were group classes I could try instead. I answered that I liked the focus and that he should be happy someone was finally pushing me. He went silent for a moment, then said he did not like the way people talked about the videos. I snapped that if people were talking, it was because he made such a big deal out of everything. He sighed and focused on the road. That weekend, Jade texted me asking for a girls' night at the bar where she worked. I told Daniel I needed me time and that he could handle bedtime. He said of course and asked when I would be home. I replied that I did not know and that he should stop trying to make me feel guilty. He said he just wanted to plan for Noah's morning routine. I told him he worried about the wrong things. At the bar, Jade made me sit at the counter closest to the light so she could take videos. We rewatched my gym clips together. She zoomed in on Marco's arms and whistled. She joked that I had finally upgraded my scenery. I laughed and told her Daniel would not last 5 minutes in one of Marco's sessions. She said Daniel looked like the guy who fixed printers in an office. I nodded, a little mean thrill in my chest. We made a silly side-by-side on her phone. One old photo of Daniel trying to lift a heavy box during our move, red-faced and laughing, and one of Marco easily pressing a bar over his head. Jade added text over Daniel's side saying weak husband, and over Marco's side saying real man energy. We sent it to our group chat with Leah and a couple of other friends. Everyone reacted with crying, laughing emojis. I told myself it was just humor. Everybody jokes about their partners. If Daniel ever saw it, he should be able to laugh too. That was my rule. When I came home, the apartment was quiet. The lights were low. Noah was asleep. I found Daniel in the living room, laptop open. A spreadsheet was on the screen, small boxes full of numbers. He quickly minimized it when he saw me. I asked what he was working on. He said he was just organizing our bills and accounts so things were clear. I scoffed and asked why he suddenly cared so much. He said he always cared, he just wanted to be more careful. I complained that he made everything into homework. He asked if I had fun with Jade. I said we laughed a lot and that it felt good to be around people with energy. His jaw tightened for a second, but he only said he was glad I enjoyed myself. That annoyed me more than if he had argued. Over the next few days, my time at the gym became the center of my life. I would talk about Marco to Leah at work, describing how he pushed me. I said he believed in me in a way Daniel never did. Leah said Daniel seemed like a nice guy from the few times she had seen him, and that maybe he just showed it differently. I shrugged and told her nice did not build muscle or passion. One evening, after a hard session, Marco asked about my weekend plans, while we stood in the hallway near the locker rooms. I joked that my weekend was the gym, since there was nothing exciting waiting at home. He raised an eyebrow and asked if my husband knew I felt that way. I said he was used to it, and that he was too busy being safe and steady to notice. I watched Marco's face carefully. He gave a small, non-committal smile. He was smart enough to stay vague, but the fact that he listened at all made me feel special. When I got home, Daniel was at the dining table with papers spread out. Bank statements, printed emails, a notebook. I frowned and asked why he was turning our house into an office. He said he was making sure everything was in order, just in case something happened. I laughed and asked what he thought would happen. An earthquake? He said calmly that relationships could change too, and it was good to be prepared. I snapped that he was being dramatic and paranoid. He closed the notebook and asked if we could talk about the gym again. He said he did not like how I spoke about Marco in public. I told him he was jealous because he did not match my level. He said it was not about muscles, it was about respect. I rolled my eyes and said, "Respect follows results," and I had results. He looked at me like I had slapped him, but he did not raise his voice. He just said he was listening and that he heard me clearly. Later that night, I went to the kitchen for water and heard a soft sound from the small printer in the corner of the living room. A single page slid out. I walked over and picked it up. It was blank. I called out and asked why he was printing nothing. From the bedroom, he answered that the printer sometimes did that when he checked the connection. I laughed, tossed the page into the trash, and went back to bed. If he wanted to play with spreadsheets and blank pages, fine. I had my trainer, my videos, my friend's attention. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had power. I did not plan to give it up just because my husband suddenly decided to act serious. The first time I realized other people were really watching us was at the playground. It was a bright Saturday morning. Daniel had Noah on the swings, pushing him gently, counting each push. I sat on a nearby bench with my phone, waiting for Marco to reply to a message about my next workout. I had posted a short video of him standing behind me at the squat rack, his hands hovering near my waist, captioned with a joke about finally training with a real man. It had more views than anything else I had posted in months. One of the other moms, a woman named Claire, walked over and smiled at Noah, then looked at me. She said she had seen my gym video, the one everybody had shared in the local group. She laughed, but it was that tight laugh that sounds more like a question. She said my trainer looked very close and that my husband was brave to let me post that. Brave. That word sat wrong in my chest. I forced a laugh and said Daniel knew I was just joking and that he was too secure to be bothered. Claire glanced at Daniel, who was focused on pushing Noah. His shoulders looked even narrower from that distance. She only said, well, she hoped everything was okay at home, then changed the subject. I smiled until she walked away, then stared at her back, annoyed she had tried to make me feel guilty in public. When Daniel came back to the bench with Noah, who was demanding a snack, he looked calmer than I expected. He opened a little container of crackers and handed them to our son. Then he sat beside me and said he heard what Claire had mentioned. He asked quietly which video she meant. I said she was just being dramatic and that people always gossip. He said he still wanted to know. I told him it was the one where Marco was helping me squat, and added that it was funny and everyone understood that. He did not agree. He just said we could talk later, his mouth a thin line. That annoyed me more than if he had raised his voice. In the car, Noah fell asleep in his seat. Daniel drove without music. I scrolled through my comments, telling myself I was popular now, that people envied my progress. He glanced at me at a red light and asked if I wanted to have dinner at his mother's place that evening. I almost refused, but then I thought maybe I should show Ellen I was fine, that I was in control. I said yes like I was doing him a favor. Ellen's living room smelled like tea and old books. Framed photos of Daniel and Josh as kids lined the walls. When we arrived, Ellen greeted Noah with a hug, and then hugged me too, though less tight, I could feel her eyes on me as I took off my coat. While Daniel played with Noah on the floor, Ellen asked if I wanted tea. In the kitchen, she poured hot water and then lowered her voice. She said she had seen my gym video because a friend had shown her, thinking it was funny. She asked if everything was okay between me and Daniel. I took a breath, decided I would not let her put me in the wrong. I told her Daniel was being sensitive because I was finally focusing on myself. I said I was tired of being the only one trying to stay young and attractive, and that the video was just a joke. I said Daniel didn't compliment me anymore, and that when he did, it felt half-hearted. Ellen frowned slightly and said Daniel had always loved me, that he talked about me kindly. I shrugged and told her love without passion was not enough. I said if she thought the video was a problem, maybe that said more about her idea of marriage than about mine. It was a sharp comment, but I wanted to push her back. She did not argue. She just gave me my cup of tea and said she hoped we could remember Noah in all of this. Later, in the living room, she watched Daniel help Noah build a small tower. She told him he was a good father. He smiled without looking up. I felt a strange mix of jealousy and irritation. Everyone wanted to protect Daniel, like he was fragile. Nobody looked at me and said I was brave for trying to change my life. On Monday at the clinic, Leah and I sat in the break room between patients, chewing on vending machine snacks. I was messaging Marco, sending him a selfie in my gym outfit and asking if he thought I was improving. He replied with a fire emoji and wrote that I was getting there. I showed the message to Leah and said jokingly that my trainer believed in me more than my husband did. Leah gave a small laugh, but her eyes were careful. She asked if I thought I might be crossing a line. I asked what line she meant. She said maybe I should think about how it would look if someone showed Daniel the messages. I answered that Daniel was not that type, that he was too busy being tired and safe. I added that a little flirting was normal, that if husbands wanted their wives to stay loyal, they should make them feel desired. Leah did not argue, but she looked down at her coffee, and I had the sense she did not completely agree. It annoyed me, but I told myself she was just jealous she didn't have someone like Marco. That afternoon, Daniel texted asking if he could take a long lunch break one day this week for a personal errand. I barely read it, just saw that he would not be home early and that it meant less time with him asking questions. I replied that it was fine and that he did not need to run his schedule by me like I was his boss. He wrote back a simple thanks. I did not see what he actually did in that time, but I can guess now. Back then, I only saw the gaps. On Wednesday, I came home a bit earlier than usual because Marco had cancelled a session to cover for another trainer. The apartment was quiet. Daniel's shoes were gone from their usual place, and the car was not in the lot. I assumed he had picked Noah up from daycare and taken him somewhere. I went to the bedroom, threw my bag on the bed, and saw his laptop missing from the desk. It gave me a weird twist in my stomach, like he had taken something secret away. What I did not see was the office tower lobby across town, where he stood in a plain shirt and held a visitor badge. I only knew later that he met someone there. At the time, all I noticed was that when he came back that evening, he seemed strangely calm. He kissed Noah's head, asked me politely if I'd eaten, and said he had had a busy day. There was a new contact on his phone, saved only with a small emoji. When I saw the icon flash during dinner, I teased him that he had a secret girlfriend. He smiled faintly and said it was just someone helping him get organized. I laughed and told him he was too boring to have secrets. That night, he went into the small guest room instead of our bedroom. He said he had to sort some boxes and that he did not want to keep me awake. I snapped that he was being childish, making a scene, acting like a victim. He said he didn't want to fight, he just wanted some space to think. I told him if he wanted me to respect him, he should stop hiding. We argued in the hallway, our voices low so Noah would not wake. He said he could not keep pretending everything was fine while I made him into a joke. I said I would stop joking when he stopped being weak. I reminded him of the video where Marco caught me, and how everyone said I looked strong. I asked, when was the last time he made me feel that way? Instead of shouting, he took out his phone and placed it on the shelf by the door, screen facing down. He said he wanted to remember this conversation clearly. I laughed and said only cowards needed records. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he said he hears me, that I had made my feelings clear, and that he would act accordingly. He went into the guest room and clicked the door shut. I stood there staring at the blank wood, my chest tight, but I refused to feel guilty. I told myself he was just trying to punish me with silence. Later, I walked past the room again and heard a faint sound, like a drawer closing and something being taped. I imagined him hiding snacks in there, or maybe money. I shook my head and went back to the bedroom. On his nightstand, his phone lit up again. A new event popped up on his calendar. Follow-up. I smiled to myself, thinking he was finally going to some self-help group, or maybe asking a doctor for something. In my mind, everything he did was just another sign that he could not handle a strong woman. A few days after that hallway fight, we had dinner with my family at a casual restaurant near the mall. Daniel suggested we stay home, but I told him my mother would be offended if we skipped. Really, I wanted an audience. I wanted to feel like the main character again. The restaurant was busy and loud, with families squeezed into booths and kids running between tables. Jade was already there with two of her friends, laughing too loudly as usual. My mother, Ingrid, sat near the end of the table, checking her phone. When Daniel and I arrived with Noah, everyone greeted him like always. Noah climbed into a booster seat between us, banging his spoon on the table. Jade asked immediately about the gym. She wanted an update, some fresh content. I told her Marco had added weight to my squats and that my legs were on fire. She whistled and said it sounded intense. One of her friends asked if Daniel worked out too. I smiled sweetly and said he was more of a brain gym person, clicking keyboards instead of weights. People laughed. Daniel gave a tight smile. Noah looked up, confused, then went back to his spoon. I started telling them about one session where Marco had to catch me because I almost lost my balance. I widened my eyes and showed with my hands how he had grabbed my waist. I said he did it like it was nothing, like I weighed air. Jade clapped her hands and said I was living. One of her friends asked, half joking, if Daniel ever did that. I shrugged and said he tried to lift a heavy box once and nearly dropped it on his foot. That story always got laughs, and it worked again. Then I said it. I said some men were sweet but weak, and that you could not expect them to protect you, only to carry the diaper bag. Jade almost fell off her chair, laughing. She added that I needed a man who matched my energy, not someone who just sat at a desk. My mother, Ingrid, smirked and said Daniel was kind, but that I should not shrink myself just to make him feel big. I didn't look at him when I said these things. I kept my eyes on my wine glass, my nails, my sister's face. I only saw Daniel in the corner of my vision, straight back, jaw tight, eyes on his plate. He kept serving Noah more fries, cutting them smaller, making sure he ate. He did not interrupt. His silence annoyed me. It made me feel like he was making me look cruel, even though I told myself it was all jokes. After dinner, we walked out to the parking lot. The air was cooler, the lights harsh. Jade and her friends lit cigarettes near the entrance, laughing about some story from the bar. Ingrid hugged Noah and said goodbye with a soft, "See you, sweetheart." She hugged me and told me to keep working on myself, then nodded at Daniel with a simple, "Good night," nothing more. When we reached the car, Daniel opened the back door for Noah, helping him into his seat. Then he closed it and turned to me. There was a stillness in his face that I did not like. He said he needed to talk about what happened at dinner. I sighed and said we were not doing drama in a parking lot. He said calmly that he did not feel respected, that being called weak in front of my family hurt him. I rolled my eyes and said everyone knew I was exaggerating, and that he needed to stop taking everything so seriously. He said it was not the first time, that the gym jokes were turning into something else, that people were watching, that even parents at the playground were talking. I snapped that if he didn't want people talking, he should try being more interesting. He flinched, then took a breath, as if holding something down. He said he didn't want to be the punchline anymore, and that he wouldn't accept being made into a joke so I could feel powerful. I told him respect follows results, and that if he wanted respect, he should change, not me. I said the attention I was getting was finally making me feel alive. He went silent for a few seconds, then said he understood now, and that he would have to protect himself and Noah. I accused him of threatening me. He said no, he was not threatening, just stating a fact. His voice was calm, almost too calm. He opened the car door and asked me to get in so we could take Noah home. On the drive back, I posted a quick story, a shot of the dark car interior, emoji hearts, a caption about trying to glow up while your partner stays stuck. It made me feel better, like I had won the moment. A few nights later, I met Jade at the bar after a gym session. I came straight in my leggings and an oversized hoodie, hair in a ponytail, face flushed. Jade had saved me a stool under bright lights. She wanted to film a little gym girl night out video for her followers. I showed her a clip from that day's workout, Marco picking me up under my knees and shoulders as part of some strength challenge, spinning me halfway and setting me down. I had laughed and leaned into him, my hands around his neck for balance. You could hear other people clapping in the background. Jade's eyes went wide. She said it looked like a movie scene. She pressured me to post it. I hesitated for a second, thinking of Claire's comment at the playground, of Ellen's questions in the kitchen. Then I pushed the thoughts away. I told myself if I started censoring myself for Daniel's feelings, I would never change. So I posted it. I tagged the gym and added a caption. "When your trainer can do what your husband can't." Jade screamed with laughter, already sharing it to her own story. Her friends did the same. My phone buzzed with likes and replies. Daniel had no idea yet, and for a moment that felt like power. When I got home, the apartment was dark except for the glow from the living room. Daniel sat at the table with his laptop open, glasses on. Next to the computer were neat stacks of papers, printed bank statements, a calendar with dates highlighted, notes in tidy handwriting. On the screen, I saw a spreadsheet with columns labeled things like date, event, and effect on Noah. Before I could read more, he minimized it. I laughed and asked if he was planning a business takeover. He said he was just trying to understand patterns, to see how things had changed over time. I said that sounded insane, like something a paranoid person would do. He answered that it helped him think clearly. His tone was even, not defensive. That bothered me. He asked if I'd had fun with Jade. I told him yes, that it was nice to be around people with ambition and energy. He looked at me for a long moment and then said he was glad I knew what I wanted. There was something final in the way he said it. I turned away, pretending not to feel anything. A couple of days later, I took Noah back to the playground. While he slid down the slide, I heard two other parents talking nearby. One of them mentioned that gym video and laughed awkwardly. The other said she felt bad for the husband in the clip. I realized they were talking about me, about us. My neck went hot. I pretended not to hear, but every word landed. Disrespect, poor guy. Public humiliation. I told myself they were just jealous, small-minded people who didn't understand empowerment. That night, as I walked past the guest room, I heard a low, careful sound, a shredder humming. I tried the door. It was locked. I knocked and asked what he was doing. He called out that he was clearing old paperwork, bills we didn't need anymore. I said he could have told me before turning the house into a secret office. He replied that I'd made it clear I wasn't interested in the boring details. After the noise stopped, he came out with a small trash bag and carried it to the bin. On his way back, He paused by the fridge and wrote something on the family calendar with a pen. When he walked away, I went to look. In neat letters, on an empty square later that week, he had written, "Paper drop, 3:15 p.m. I laughed out loud. I told myself it was about some work delivery or mail thing. I made a joke in my head that he finally had a personality. Spreadsheets and paper drops. It never crossed my mind that the papers he was thinking about had anything to do with me. The night everything tipped over started like just another gym night. I left the clinic in my leggings, under a long coat, feeling that familiar little rush. Daniel texted asking what time I would be home and if I wanted him to save some dinner. I wrote back that he should stop planning around me like I was a child and that there was a special class I wanted to try. He replied with a simple, "Okay, be safe." No heart, no joke. I stared at the message and told myself he was being cold on purpose. When I walked into the gym, the place was packed. Music thumped, lights flashed, and there were more people than I had ever seen there. A special strength camp class was starting, and Marco was leading it. He saw me come in, smiled wide, and told me I was just in time. I felt eyes on me as I took off my coat and slipped into the group. The class was loud and sweaty. People cheered for each other. Marco moved through the room like he owned it, correcting forms, shouting encouragement. When he got to me, he stayed a bit longer. He told the group I was one of his hardest working clients. My chest swelled. He adjusted my shoulders, my hips, my knees. I knew anyone watching could tell he was taking a special interest. I wanted that. Near the end of the class, he called for a partner challenge. He asked for a volunteer to demo with him. Nobody moved at first. Then Jade's comment from a message flashed in my head, something about main character energy. So I raised my hand. Marco grinned and told everyone to give me a round of applause. People clapped and whistled. My skin buzzed. He had me stand in front of him, then told the group he was going to show a trust lift. He slipped one arm behind my knees and another behind my back, and in one smooth motion, lifted me off the floor like I weighed nothing. I made a small, shocked sound, half real, half for show. Everyone cheered. I wrapped my arms around his neck to keep my balance. He spun halfway to show how strong base and good core worked. For a second, I forgot everything else. It felt like a scene from someone else's life, someone cooler, freer. Phones were out. I saw screens pointed at us. I did not tell them to stop. When he set me down, breathless, I laughed too loudly and said something about my husband needing lessons. People laughed. Someone shouted that I had upgraded. I smiled and let it sit. Marco gave me a quick look, not entirely comfortable, but he said nothing. Class ended in a cloud of sweat and chatter. I pulled on my hoodie but kept it unzipped, enjoying how my reflection looked in the mirrors. While people stretched, I checked my phone. Jade had already sent me a screen recording from someone's story. Marco lifting me, my legs in the air, my arms around his neck. She had added text over it. Tell me again why she should stay loyal to a weak husband. With laughing emojis. I should have told her to delete it. Instead, I laughed. I saw a message from Daniel, just sent. He was outside, earlier than we agreed, with Noah in the car. He asked me to come out when I was done. There was no extra question, no complaint, just exact words. It made me feel strange, like I had lost something I thought I could control. I told myself he was being clingy, that he had come early on purpose to spy on me. I slipped my phone into my bag and walked toward the front desk where Marco was talking to another trainer. I leaned on the counter, close to him, joking that he had almost dropped me. He smiled and said he would never let that happen. My heart kicked at the word, never. I laughed and said not everyone was as strong as him. The receptionist glanced between us with a tight little smile. A staff member walked by and said quietly that someone was waiting for me outside with a kid in the back seat. I felt my neck heat, knowing who it was. For a second, I imagined Daniel sitting there, watching through the glass while Marco stood near me. I told myself this would be good. Maybe he would finally see what he was risking by not changing. I walked toward the exit slowly, letting my hand brush Marco's arm as I said goodbye. He said to message him about our next session. I felt powerful in that moment, like both men were orbiting around me, one strong and exciting, one steady and dull. Through the glass, I saw our car. Noah's small face pressed against the window for a second, then disappeared. Daniel stood outside the driver's door, hands in his jacket pockets, watching me walk across the gym floor. He did not wave. He did not hurry me. He just watched. As soon as I stepped outside, the night air hit my sweat-damp skin. I tugged my hoodie a little closer but kept the zipper open. Daniel's eyes flicked briefly to the gym inside, then back to me. His expression was calm, almost blank. That bothered me more than anger would have. He said he had arrived early and seen some of the class through the window. He mentioned the part where I was in Marco's arms. His tone was even, not raised. I rolled my eyes and said he was spying. He said no, he was just picking me up, and that the windows were large. He added that a lot of people had their phones out. I told him everyone recorded everything these days, and that only insecure men made drama over a workout. I said he should be proud. His wife was attractive enough to get attention. He asked if I thought humiliating him in front of strangers was something to be proud of. I laughed and said he was being dramatic, that nobody there cared about him. They were looking at me and my progress. He mentioned the caption on my earlier video, the one about real men. I told him it was a joke, that people knew he was the sweet one. He said he did not want to be the sweet one if that meant the weak one in my mouth. There was a sharpness in the way he said my mouth. It made me feel exposed. I accused him of trying to control me, of wanting me small and quiet. I said that if he had kept himself in better shape, maybe I would not need a trainer to feel something. It was a cruel line, and I knew it even as I said it. He did not shout. He just looked at me for a long moment, his eyes tired in a way I had not seen before. He glanced at the car where Noah sat watching us. Then he said he would not do this here, in front of our child and strangers. He said he had seen enough, and that the pattern was clear. I tried to push him into the scene I wanted. I said, if he walked away, he was proving me right, proving he was weak, that real men fought for their wives. For a second, I thought he might break and beg or raise his voice. Instead, he took a slow breath and said he understood now that we wanted different things. He said he could not stop me from posting or flirting, but he could decide what he would accept in his own life. His voice was steady. He said he would handle it properly from now on. The word properly sounded small at first, almost boring. I snorted and asked if he was going to write another spreadsheet about his feelings. He shook his head and said this was not about feelings anymore. It was about facts and decisions. He opened the passenger door for me and asked if I was coming or if I preferred to walk. I slid into the seat, angry and hot-faced. As he drove, I took out my phone and recorded a quick story. My reflection in the car window, gym lights behind me, Daniel's profile faint in the background. I added text over it, trying to glow up with a jealous, weak husband in the way. I tagged nobody by name, just used vague words, but I knew people would understand. At home, Daniel parked the car and went straight inside with Noah. I stayed for a moment, checking my notifications. The story was already getting replies. Jade sent laughing emojis and wrote that I should not let him drag me down. Someone else wrote that I deserved a real man. I smiled, feeling that old hit of validation. When I finally went in, the apartment was quiet. Daniel had put Noah to bed. In the dim hallway, I watched him walk into the guest room with a small fireproof box under his arm. I saw him place it on the desk before closing the door. Later, when he stepped out to get water, I peeked into the room. On the desk sat the box and his laptop. The screen showed a clean folder tree, Archive A and Archive B. His phone, lying face up on the dresser, buzzed with a new calendar alarm. I read it as I passed. Downtown 10:30 a.m. I smirked and told myself he was probably going to some boring workshop, or maybe finally joining a gym for weak men. I did not even think to ask. I was too busy answering Jade's messages and watching the view count climb on the video, where I called him jealous and weak. Daniel texted, asking if I wanted a ride from the gym, like nothing had changed. I finished my session with Marco, took time in the mirror, then walked toward the lobby expecting him to wait in the car and stew. Instead, a woman near the desk asked my name, confirmed it, and handed me a thick envelope while the receptionist watched. Outside, Daniel stood by the car with Noah strapped in and the trunk packed. I skimmed the first page. Divorce, temporary custody, exclusive use of the apartment, for him. He met my eyes once and said everything was in writing.